All right. I don't think I need to tell you what book we're going to be talking about today, since it's just the two of us. But of course, for those watching in the future, we're covering Into the Unbeing. The scripts are by Zach Thompson, line art and colors by Hayden Sherman, and letters by Jen Campbell. And the front cover as well is done by Hayden Sherman. They also have some variant covers towards the back, which some of them are pretty cool. Makes you wonder what the artwork or how the book may have looked if a different artist were on it, but I definitely think Hayden Sherman did really well on this book. Carter, what are your general thoughts on the first volume?
Yeah, so like I mentioned, second time reading this.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's good. I don't think it's amazing, um, story-wise. I think the
Mm-hmm.
characters are all kind of interesting and distinct, but maybe we don't get enough of them just yet since it's part one, which I'm willing to read part two for that.
Mm-hmm.
But the artwork is incredible. I don't remember if Hayden colors Absolute Wonder Woman and all that. But based on the coloring this, I would guess not, because I do think the coloring is pretty interesting. Um, it kind of gives me like I guess like a JoJo's vibe, where
Mm-hmm.
the coloring really shifts constantly depending on the environment and the mood and all that. So that's really interesting. Um, and I do think the whole eco horror kind of allows Sherman to play with the paneling, not as extreme a way as they do with Dark Patterns, but still in an engaging way. So that's really good.
Yeah, I just checked. Absolute Wonder Woman number 10, and Jordi Belair is the colorist on that. So this is the first time that I'm seeing Hayden Sherman's colors, which I think for the most part they work. I can't really point out a specific page where it doesn't work, but yeah, it feels different than Absolute Wonder Woman. Um, my general thoughts on Into the Unbeing is much like you. I think it's an all right book. I wasn't too impressed with the script. Maybe it's because I read this last night, so I haven't had a whole lot of time to think about what the book is exactly trying to say. I mean, there's a lot of messaging whenever it comes to climate change that I feel is a bit heavy handed. Like, I think they have some clear messaging that they're trying to get through, but I think the mystery of the unbeing is getting lost at the same time of uh, the messaging, if that makes any sense. Um, Otherwise, yeah, I think Hayden Sherman does a wonderful job with the artwork inside. Uh, the beginning felt like very standard to me, uh, just standard panel layouts, and it's really whenever you get to like page what is this page 26 of the first issue, uh, that you start to see like a little bit of the Hayden we know today come out because they're climbing down the basin or they're climbing into the basin and you see these like rock formations and I was like those are fingers, and then they start walking towards the mouth and I'm like that's a head. And of course, as we know, uh the cave isn't exactly a cave that you would normally think of. In the book, the cave is somewhat alive, and the characters fight back against the idea that this cave could be a living creature because it doesn't make scientific sense. They're all scientists in one way or another. One's an entomologist, one's a biologist, one is a geologist, and then there's a surveyor. So all of them have different scientific fields, and the unbeing sort of defies everything about science. Like the rocks are like flesh in it. The layout is like a human body, and so you're questioning: was this a living creature, or is this cave like really messed up? So I think the mystery of that is great. Uh, Again, just the messaging is a bit too heavy-handed for my personal taste, but it might not be as bad for other people. What did you think of the pacing of these four issues? Did the story pull you in immediately, or did it take some time?
Um, I think the going from issue 1 to 2 is pretty jarring
Mm-hmm.
because I like the whole 4 issues, 4 different perspectives kind of thing. That's cool.
Mm-hmm.
But you don't really understand that until you kind of get into issue 2, and you're like, okay, the character I thought we were going to explore pretty deeply is gone, and we're going to explore everyone kind of equally.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know how I would fix that problem necessarily, but I do think it's a bit of a bit jarring, like I said. um in terms of pacing, I do think it's odd that they needed to make this two distinct parts and not just a straight 8 issue series, because I feel like we get a lot of like mystery
Mm-hmm.
in the first 4 issues, and we don't really get a whole lot of resolution.
Mm-hmm.
So I feel like if you just read this first trade, like you don't really get like a super satisfying conclusion.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not necessarily what I want when I buy a trade. Like I want, you're used to like an arc generally.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe the problem's not with the pacing, just maybe just the distinction between parts 1 and 2. And obviously, I haven't read any of part 2, so maybe I'll change my mind when I do. But it's kind of how I feel at the moment.
Yeah, we're in the same boat. I definitely feel like this would have benefited if it was one continuous story rather than split up between two sections, because uh like the four issues we got is all right, but it doesn't make me want to go and pick up the second trade. Like I'd be open to picking it up and reading it for the sake of the book club, but if I was left to my own devices and I didn't have to pick it up or anything, I probably wouldn't. I would just be like, yeah, I'm done. I can move on. Um, I think the pacing of the mystery is really good because you're questioning like the again you're questioning the being, like, is it alive, is it dead? um Issue 3 especially, like whenever Hayden starts to get into the crazy layouts, like I'm looking at the double page spread right now of whenever they're climbing down the cliffside and it's like shaped like a lung. The panel layout is, and like that's the Hayden that I know from Dark Patterns, so I found that to be really great. And like you, I also like the different perspectives, like each issue focusing on a different character. It allows us to get to know these characters really well. But at the same time, like, I'm left wanting. And this trade didn't give me a satisfactory ending, so to speak. Um, we hear the term writing for the trade nowadays, and that's the idea of someone finishes a whole story arc within a trade. This book was not written for the trade, I would say. This book is written for the single issues. So if you were reading this month to month, maybe you had a more satisfactory reading. But whenever you take volume one just by itself, it leaves you wanting. At least it leaves me wanting more, and not in a good way. Um, but we can go ahead and move
Yeah.
on. Go ahead.
Well, I was gonna say, I feel like maybe part of that is probably just Hayden's schedule,
Mm-hmm.
because between Dark Patterns, Wonder Woman, and probably various covers, they're super
Mm-hmm.
busy. And this one, the first 4 issues were released last year, summer, and the latter 4 for the second part were released this year.
Mm-hmm.
So I imagine it's something they were doing sort of between all their big 2 work that has to come out on time, on schedule.
Okay, I did not know that. So yeah, this could probably be like a passion project for them. So I could see why splitting
Yeah.
it up uh, may have worked for them. But I think from a publishing perspective, I think it might have been good if Dark Horse was like, will wait to publish these issues like concurrently. Let's say
Right. I agree.
we're seeing it recently with the Hush 2 scenario where you have these issues getting delayed, and Hayden Sherman works like a beast, so I don't think it would be on them. I think it's more so just like their schedule. Again, like you said, they're working on Batman Dark Patterns, Absolute Wonder Woman. They're working on the John Constantine and Doctor Strange crossover for the DC Marvel book coming next month. And then apparently they're working on another Batman book, as they said on
Right.
their Blue Sky. So yeah, they are busy. But from a publishing perspective, I think Dark Horse could have just waited to have all 8 issues and then publish them monthly.
Agreed. Agreed.
Uh, so the series deals with discovery, survival, and the unknown. What do you think the Unbeing represents?
I think I kind of spoiled myself a little bit because while we were sitting here, I was reading the description for the next trade, and it
Mm-hmm,
kind of, I guess, explains it basically. But in theory, I was kind of, or when I first read it, I guess I was thinking, unbeing is more, the state of altered reality where,
mm-hmm,
it's almost like a different dimension come into this dimension, or the stuff being altered by, whatever this ancient creature is.
mm-hmm,
But I was kind of not super certain on it, which I think is kind of the point,
mm-hmm.
until you get to part two. So
Yeah, I think the mystery will be at least more clear within the next volume. They may not outright answer it, but at least from my perspective, I think the Unbeing represents like Earth itself. Like I said, the book has a lot of messaging about climate change and like the Earth itself. Specifically with issue 2, um, whenever we see like the oil rig and the oil is like spilling out into the ocean, and then you have like the riot going on, and the police officer starts beating the guy, and then she sees the fish being like consumed by the oil, and then the oil makes like the face of a skull, almost like the skull of the Unbeing. So to me, I think the beast or the Unbeing represents like Mother Earth or the Earth itself, and it's getting back at the humans because we know that this is set in some sort of apocalypse. We're not sure what type of apocalypse it is, but uh, we know that they ended up creating this whole scientists group called Sinu to help deal with this. And of course, that's why these adventurers go into the cave in the first place. So I think the Unbeing is, again, just nature, and this is nature getting back at humanity in a way for poisoning the earth and putting it into this state of apocalypse where the Unbeing is dead, so to speak, or it is dying, so it is fighting back. That's how I view the Unbeing. Um, what role do you think the Unbeing will play in shaping the Explorers? Uh, for me, I think we're already seeing that in issue 4. Whenever we're focusing on the Surveyor, we see that she leaves the entomologist behind after her legs had been burned by stomach acid. And in a way, she's like, you should be thankful that I'm leaving you here because you get to continue being with God. She believes that the Unbeing is God themselves. And we know that they are religious. In issue 1, we saw that they had a Bible that they were putting in their backpack. So, in a way, she thinks that this creature is some sort of celestial being, and that she's doing the right thing by leaving the person behind. One, because they get to be with God, and the other for their own survival, so that they can keep moving on and keep searching for uh, the main character, the biologist. Um, so we're already seeing that happening, and then we also see like Hilder, the biologist. She's changed to be a leader. In her diary entry in the first issue, she talks about how she hates like leadership. She hates whenever people boss other people around, and yet she's forced to do so. And it's only whenever she leaves the group that she isn't forced to boss them around, and then the second in command is supposed to take over. And then we see that the second in command is thinking about killing the others and then just going on her own, because it would be easier to survive by herself and not have to worry about the other people, like taking care of them and make sure that they don't die in the unbeing. um, but those are my thoughts. How do you think the Unbeing is shaping the characters?
Right. You know, the characters are kind of interesting because I feel like you get a good amount of the older lady
Mm-hmm.
and the military lady.
Mm-hmm.
I don't remember any of their names, and I feel like you don't really get that much of the first lady, Hilder,
Mm-hmm.
and you get some of the entomologist, but she feels very different from the others because the others were all like involved in some ecological disaster, whereas she just kind of was involved in like a boating accident, and that
Mm-hmm.
feels like distinctly different from the others.
Mm-hmm.
And then she loses her legs and kind of feels like it's expendable. So I don't really know how to feel about her.
Mm-hmm.
What I imagine, so I guess I'll make predictions of what I think is going to happen for her too. I think the one that lost her legs is gonna, get some kind of mutation, and she's gonna come back with a vengeance.
Mm-hmm.
I do think the religious lady is gonna go kind of insane and like try to sacrifice them all.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then I think the other two are probably gonna duke it out a little bit when it comes to what to do, since they're both kind of the leader types.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm assuming we'll get a flashback explaining why Hilder was appointed leader, because it doesn't really seem like there's any logical reason why she should be,
Mm-hmm.
other than I guess if they were put there on assignment to study this biological anomaly, maybe that's why, 'cause she's a biologist. Um, but yeah, it's an interesting range of dynamics, and I'm not super sure how they all fit together just yet. But
Yeah. Again, I think, like you said, we'll get more of that in volume two. I think more will be revealed. I think you're right on point with the entomologist, the woman who lost her legs. Like, either they're gonna have to go back and run into her, and then she's gonna tell Hilder that the old lady, the surveyor, left her behind, and then they're gonna duke it out there. Or, like you said, she's gonna mutate somehow, maybe become one with nature, and come back with a vengeance. So in one way or another, these characters are going to continue to evolve within the next volume, and that's something that I would be interested in seeing how these characters continue to unfold. Um, which characters stood out to you the most within the first four issues? I mean, each issue focused on one character, but that's not a whole lot of time to really get to know these characters all too well. Um, Again, we'll see more of them within uh, the next four issues in volume two. For me, I think it's probably the second in command, the geologist. I think uh, her sort of police background, military background, whatever you would like to call it. She was like the security company, or part of the security company for that oil rig company. And so her having to lead the group into the cave and become this reluctant leader. and try to find their actual leader within the cave. I found that to be compelling, and it's you wonder when she's going to go off, because in the end of the second issue, or towards the end, we see like half of her face is like herself, and then the other half is the Unbeing. So it's like, is the Unbeing messing with her mind and telling her to kill the others, or is that just like her very cold and logical thinking of survival, of looking out for herself? I think seeing how she continues to unfold would be very interesting. Especially, again, I'm looking at the page whenever you see the other, where it's like half the Unbeing and half her. The page next to it has her going through the skeleton stuff, and then it turns out to be Harold Schrichten. I think that's how you pronounce their name. Uh, an explorer that supposedly went missing, and yet his outfit looks like the exact same that he wore whenever he went missing. And so it's like she's forced to face her scientific thinking with something that is supernatural in a sense. But she is the most compelling to me. Who is the most compelling character to you?
Compelling, I feel like, is the older lady
Mm-hmm,
because I feel like it's kind of a trope that like you put the super religious person into this like crazy situation
mm-hmm,
and they devolve into like some kind of fanaticism, like cult kind of stuff. I think that's a fun trope,
mm-hmm,
and it'd be interesting to see how this lady reacts in this situation, especially because she thinks that she's like inside God himself. So,
mm-hmm,
is she gonna think that she's been chosen to like salvage this corpse, or is she gonna think that she's been sent to revive him or something? And what's she gonna do to achieve that end? I fear for the dog in the next part. So
mm-hmm. Yeah, it's always a bad sign whenever there's an animal in a horror book. You always look out for the pet. Like, I know the recent Quiet Place had a cat in it, and my mom did not want to go see it because we are cat people, and she was fearing what was going to happen to the cat. But I think they did go see it eventually. I'm not sure. Um, but yeah, I'm scared about what's going to happen to the dog next. Um, so I have three questions left, and they're mostly about art. Do you have any topics that you wanted to cover about Into the Unbeing before we move on to that?
I wouldn't say it's like super related to the book, but
Mm-hmm.
I feel like if you ever read or seen Annihilation,
I have not.
okay, yeah, so it's by this guy whose name I can't recall at the moment, but
Mm-hmm.
he writes a lot of sort of like ecological horror or like biological horror stuff, and essentially the plot is that like there's this zone where nature's like all kinds of screwed up, and they send this like team of people inside to like find out, and some crazy horrific things happen.
Mm-hmm.
um and I think it's very similar in concept to this book, but it's executed much better.
Mm-hmm.
And there's lots of the mystery that is very unclear, even if you read the full trilogy. I think a fourth book just came out actually too. That's like a prequel, but I've only read the trilogy. And even the movie's okay. The book is much better. But I think if you enjoy this miniseries and you want something that's similar but a lot better,
Mm-hmm.
I think definitely recommend the Annihilation book itself. Um, I saw a new paperback at Barnes and Noble, but the audiobook is also fantastic if you or anyone listening listens to audiobooks. So
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I will have to put that on my read later list. I looked it up, and immediately the movie came up, and I saw Natalie Portman's in it. So I will have
yeah,
to. You said the movie's not as good, so I will have to check out the book instead and
yeah,
take your word for it.
but I remember, if I remember correctly, I feel like I read a director's interview where he basically was like, "Yeah, I read like half of the book a few years ago, and then I made the movie." I
Oh,
was like, "Oh boy." So
yeah, that would be like I guess a Batman director reading like the very first issue of Batman and be like, "All right, I'm ready to make the movie now," and it's like, "Hold on, Buckaroo, you've missed a lot of important details there." Uh,
right. So yeah, definitely recommend the book.
yeah, I will have to check it out. Getting into the art side of things, Hayden Sherman's art is highly stylized, abstract, and at times chaotic. How does the art style affect your reading experience for this book?
How does it affect it? Well, for one thing, I think Hilder looks way too much like Steve Trevor. So
Hmm.
every time I read it, I'm like, wait, what the hell is this? But that's kind of besides the point. Um, I do think they have a very interesting style.
Hmm.
I don't, I don't know that I think it works as well for like the crazy monsters in this book.
Hmm.
Like, I'm looking at that page where they're in that it's issue 2 where she's looking at the teeth and there's that weird like monster in the teeth
Oh yeah.
and like the kind of bird thing, and it's kind of weird looking, but it's not like horrifying, and kind of
Hmm.
the same thing with the moose, whatever that is they find later. Like, it's interesting looking, but it's not like scary or like super screwed up like I
Hmm.
feel like it should be. So uh, I do think, their panel layouts are fantastic as usual. I do think they know how to color their own work really well, which, I don't know how common that is because I feel like most of the books I read tend to have a separate colorist.
Hmm.
Um, so that's interesting. Um, but in terms of like being a horror book, I feel like
Hmm.
maybe Hayden is not the right person for a horror book because things just aren't like that horrifying.
Hmm.
And, maybe the goal wasn't to be a horror book. Um, but it kind of feels like it should be, right? So I don't know. Like, it's definitely excellent. Panel layouts are great and not standard, which is really interesting.
Hmm.
But I do think the monster designs are maybe a little lacking. Although the overall monster design, like the thing they're crawling into, is really interesting and good, I think.
Yeah, when it comes to the monster designs in this book, they are not terrifying. They're interesting, but they aren't scary. And I'm glad that you called that out because yesterday on Post Pals, I made a controversial statement, or I at least outed myself with a controversial opinion, where I said I do not like Junji Ito books because horror comics are not scary to me. You can show me like a terrifying Junji Ito panel, and like it does not scare me. The thing that like gets me terrified is the more psychological thriller books, like your Blood on the Tracks, your I'm trying to think of other ones, your PTSD radios, stuff like that, stuff that really like messes with your mind is like what affects me. So this book
Mhm.
was not terrifying to me at all. So I did not even think that this was a horror book. I thought it was maybe like a mystery adventure book. So I'm glad that someone else didn't find this like terrifying because uh, at least I'm not alone in that camp. But yeah, I would have to agree. The monster designs are not terrifying, but the Unbeing itself, like I love how they really play around with the idea that this is a living creature and we're going to take full advantage of that. So like in issue 2, or not issue 2, issue 3, they start playing around with like the lungs and like the layout you see on what page is this? This is page 70 of the Kindle version. I'm not sure what page that that would be for the physicals, but you see them like swimming through the veins to like escape from the moose-like creature. I love that, and you can just see like all of the veins on the other side. It's very detailed. At the beginning of the discussion, I called out whenever they're entering the basin, and you have like the fingers sticking out of the mountainside, and it makes you to think like this is a living creature, and then they get even more into that within the later books. Um, like I called out earlier, the first two issues sort of use standard layouts. I think issue 3 is like whenever Hayden starts to really mess around with the idea of, all right, this is a living creature, so I'm gonna make the panels look like body parts. And so of course we get that lung page, and we see it again on page 75 where it's a double page, and the lungs are like separated into different layers for the different panels as the group are like setting their beds on the cliffside. I love the layout of that. So overall, Hayden does a lot of great work in this, and I love the layouts of the third and fourth issue more than the first two, but the first two are still great. Um, my other art
For sure,
related
for sure. How's
question was: are there any panels or sequences that stuck out to you? We sort of already talked about this with the whole lungs, but is there one that you wanted to call out?
um that first initial splash spread and what it's the valley and like you said the fingers and face. That's
Mm-hmm.
interesting. Because I think it's drawn in such a way that like first you notice the face and then you notice the hands.
Mm-hmm.
Um, maybe that's just me, but I think that's really interesting because it gives you like a sense of scale. Like if that's the hand
Mm-hmm.
way over there, this thing is giant. Um, let me flip through real fast. I do like the spread where it's you have to flip the book horizontally.
Mm-hmm.
I think comics should do that a lot more. I don't know why they don't, because I think that's like um, really takes advantage of the medium generally. Maybe it doesn't work so well in digital, but I think in
Yeah,
physical it works really well.
yeah. I did not know that you had to flip it to the side. That's really interesting. That's okay. I would like. I'm gonna have to check out the physical version to see how that looks
Here,
because
let
that'd
me
be interesting.
turn my camera on and I'll show you.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you can see me. Hold on. Maybe I need to plug it in. Okay, here. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So you like turn, and it's just like
Okay.
one giant spread. And it doesn't really make use of the space super well because they only kind of come down the side here.
Uh huh.
But you can. I kind of wish that they like went here and like down back and forth, but maybe that's more biologically accurate. I don't know.
Okay, that's interesting because like the physical version, it looks like it cuts off a bit of like the artwork that you get in the digital. So like some of the sides are a bit trimmed, at least from how it looks for me. Uh,
Gotcha. Yeah, that sucks.
oh. Yeah, I do love whenever books play with it. Sort of like they did that in the Batman New 52, The Court of Owls, where they had you like rotate the book all around as you like go through the pages whenever Batman's running through the maze. So I love that Into the Unbeing did that as well.
Right. Yeah, that's super cool. I think Martian Manhunter, Absolute Martian Manhunter did that pretty recently too, in
Mm-hmm.
issue 5, I want to say. So yeah, that's I think that's a pretty important part of the craft is, taking advantage of the medium these days when you need to be innovative. I guess you don't need to be if you're, Marvel doing Spider-Man, but if you're doing indie books, you need to be innovative.
Yeah, yeah.
I was gonna
Mhm.
follow up about the Junji Ito stuff you're talking about. I haven't read any Junji Ito. I have the Gyo hardcover, I think. I just haven't read it yet.
Mhm.
But, I hear a lot about how he's really good at sort of building that tension. And I kind of agree that, a lot of like jump scare horror is not really that appealing to me. The
Mm-hmm.
last night we went and saw the new Conjuring movie, and I
Mm-hmm.
really don't jump at jump scares, and I don't find jump scare movies that interesting or like slasher horror movies or anything. But
Mm-hmm.
kind of like a psychological like slow burn like that is, I think, what really hits harder for me. So I generally agree about. I think it's really tricky to do that in comics.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I would say, I haven't really tried to read a lot of horror comics, but I would say the two that kind of do that the best that I've read so far are probably Dark Patterns with like, um, especially the first arc, I would say,
Mm-hmm.
with the screwed up dude with all the nails and stuff in him, and then Department of Truth to a degree kind of has that like eerie ambiance. So I'll have to try to read that Yo I have, and then maybe some more Ito if I find it compelling.
Yeah, I think the only Ito book that I enjoyed is their adaptation of the Frankenstein novel. Like they did a manga adaptation of that. They also did a small adaptation of the beginning of the Lighthouse movie, uh, the one
Okay.
with Robert Pattinson and Willem Dafoe. It was released only in Japan, so if you want to read it, you do have to sail the seven seas to find it. But that was fun as well, at least to see it, Robert Pattinson and Willem Dafoe in a manga art style. But yeah, I'm definitely in the minority whenever it comes to Junji Ito. Like a lot of people love their work, and it's just not for me. I like something that makes me think and makes me like. I love whenever a book can stretch out the tension that it's like so thin you could cut it with the butter knife, so to speak. And there's very few books that I've read that does that for me. Uh, PTSD Radio and Blood on the Tracks do that for me.
I'll have to look those ones up because I don't think I've heard of them.
Yeah. Uh, I will warn you, PTSD Radio is on indefinite hiatus because the manga creator got so scared that they had to stop writing the book. Like, they thought they were being literally haunted while making it. So, it's on indefinite hiatus. I think there's like 3 English volumes out, maybe 4. Um, yeah, it's a lot of fun.
Okay, I think I have. I remember seeing this blood on the tracks image. I feel like you've talked about it before.
Yeah, I've thrown it in the Discord a couple of times, and there's like some anime channels that have talked about it. I know Super Eye Patch Wolf has done a video about it, but I have not watched it because
Yeah.
I have not finished the series myself, so I'm trying to avoid like ending spoilers.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I love Super Eye Petrol. His videos are really good.
Uh, yeah, and then my last question is, where do you think the story is heading after issue 4?
I guess I kind of already answered that earlier.
Yeah.
But yeah, I do think we'll see a return of a fourth character. Hopefully, the dog makes it out okay. We'll get a little religious fanaticism and then some leadership conflicts. And then, in terms of who's going to survive, I have a feeling everyone's going to die but Hilder. That just kind of seems the way it's structured, but
Hmm.
we'll have to see. Or
Yeah,
maybe Hilder will become the next Unbeing. Who knows?
that could be interesting. Like she becomes one with nature, or maybe they all become some sort of creature within the unbeing, like the bird creature and the moose creature were human before, but then uh, they become one with the unbeing, and so that's why at least the moose creature was peaceful in the beginning. Like they had talked about, it wasn't trying to hurt you, it was just curious, and so maybe like the human side of the moose was trying to reach out to the team. I don't know, that could be interesting, but I think I'm with you. Uh, I could see the surveyor, the religious person, welcoming death since she thinks the unbeing is celestial. But yeah, I'd be curious to see where the next volume goes. Uh, we can leave it up to the group if they'd like to cover Volume 2. I'd be open to doing so, and I can put it on the uh, polls whenever Volume 2 comes out. I know it comes out next month, but I'm not sure when exactly.
I think it's October 7th, was it? Something like that. But yeah, I would do it if someone else nominated it. I probably would not nominate it myself for follow up.
Mhm.
But I'll probably read it just on my own because I hate not finishing at least a story arc, you know.
Mhm.
So
Yeah, Volume 2 comes out on the 7th. Yeah, you were right. So, yeah, I'll check it out if someone else recommends it for the Modern Book Club, but I don't think it's going to be something that I'm going to actively check out myself unless it's like a couple of months down the road. I'm like, oh yeah, maybe I should go read that or something. Who knows? Um, but those are all the questions that I have. Is there anything left that you want to tackle for Into the Unbeing?
no, I think that covers it.
All right, then we can call it here. For those watching in the future, thank you so much for taking the time to watch the whole thing. And of course, feel free to leave your thoughts about Into the Unbeing in the community book club chat. Just because these discussions are over doesn't mean that they have to end. Uh, we can always talk about the books that we cover within the chat. If you do talk about spoilers, just make sure to mark it as a spoiler, just to let those people who want to see it for themselves get to explore it without any spoilers. But that's going to do it.